Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I am going to be giving my list for the Booktube Spin number 4. I missed out on the last one, so I wanted to make sure I got to this one. I am just barely in time for it too, because the spin numbers will actually be released the same day that this comes out. I'm not quite sure what time it's going to be released, but I'm getting this recorded as of the 3rd. Actually, it might be Tuesday the 5th. So I think I'll be okay. I think I'll be a day ahead now that I think about it. But I will link, of course, to Rick's video about the Booktube Spin. It sounds like this is going to be going like quarterly. It's been every few months before here too anyway. So this is just really a fun thing that I've enjoyed doing, because you pick a list of 20 books, and then on the allotted day he is going to spin a virtual wheel, and it gives you the numbers, and then you're supposed to read within the next period of time the books that are selected. So it does sound like he's going to do 2 this time. Like I said, I missed out on the last one, so it might have been 2 then too as well. But then you get the rest of the quarter, so in this case the rest of the year, to read them. And when I did this before is when I ended up reading the Ruin of Kings, which is something I'd meant to get to for quite a while. So I usually try to pick books that I do want to read but just haven't gotten to for whatever reason, along with some like random stuff too. So if you saw the last time I did this, which was a while back, there will be a couple of familiar titles in here. Most of this is different though, from what I had in there before, but some of them I've just literally had that long and still not gotten to, so there are actually a fair amount of repeat entries here we'll get to. So let's start in with the list. So I have 4 groups of 5, and really there's only 3 categories, because I was looking at books for the category of like a new series to start, and I had so many that I actually have 10. So I have that, and I'll start with the first 5 of those. So the first one is Jade City by Fonda Lee. I've heard a ton about this book in this series, and it sounds like it's really hit or miss. This is another one of those books where people either seem to love this book in series or really don't seem to care for it, and I'm curious to see where I will fall in. So I did get this a while back, actually, in book exchange we did in Discord, so I want to get to reading this. This is supposed to be like fantasy-esque, but heavily mob-themed, and I know Jade is somewhat with the magic system, so it should be interesting. I'm not like overly into mob stuff, but I also I've enjoyed, several mob movies, TV shows, that sort of thing, but I'll be interested to see where I land on that. The next one is Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, and this is the first book in The Expanse. So I think most people are probably familiar with this and Jade City. You'll see I have several others that most people are probably familiar with too. I've been meaning to start this for quite a while. I only have the first book so far. It's pretty decent length, and I've heard the first one takes some time to kind of get going. But this is an incredibly popular series, and I've been trying to get better about doing some more sci-fi, adding that into the mix. So I'm really excited to try this and see what I think. Potentially then, of course, I'll need to read the rest too, and I'm not sure when I'll get to them. After so long of trying to get through series I was going through, I guess now I'm just starting new ones is what I'm looking at. But that's the reason why a lot of these books I haven't started yet, because I have so many other series going on. Starting a new series, I'm always like, no, I'll just read something else. A third, and very recognizable, this one possibly more than the other 2 depending on your circles, but is the 5th Season by N.K. Jemisin. This book is another pretty polarizing one. I've heard people who absolutely love this and others who just absolutely hate it. So it's another one where I'm just not sure where I'm going to fall. This one, even if it doesn't win, I might still try to read this month, because Andrew is reading it for Andrew's Recently Reads, and so I might try to give it a shot with him. So this one could be selected anyway, but I've had this. I actually have all 3. I originally found the 3rd book at Half Price Books, and so I figured I should get the other 2, and I did, and I still haven't gotten around to reading it. This one, I've never known really a ton about. I've heard a lot of people talk about it, but I haven't really looked at any spoiler stuff, obviously, since I haven't read it. I know the second person is something that people aren't a huge fan of, so. Then going into another series that I've been meaning to start for a while, probably a little bit less recognizable, unless you're one of the people who's very familiar with it, that is The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Baker, and This is the first book in the Prince of Nothing series. So this is one I know Mark from Slowly Read has been a huge fan of, and there's several people around the Discord that I know are huge fans of this series as well, and this author. So I did get the first book finally, and it's one I've been meaning to try. I just have not found the time to fit it in so far. There are quite a few more, and this is supposed to be pretty crazy dark and just really well written. So I'm really interested to try this out also and see where I fall. And then the last one in the first group of 5 is, got a cord coming with it, Spine of the Dragon by Kevin J. Anderson. And this is the first book in a series that's name I can't recall. It's definitely part of a series, but oh well, I have the second one, so I know it's part of a series. But I got this, and then later the second one actually really cheap on Book Outlet. And so this is another one too, where the plot of this sounds really interesting. It gives me some Wheel of Time vibes, for not for like in general, but just part of the plot. But basically, there's like a people who come back that have been gone for a long time, and that's I haven't read the synopsis of this in a long time, but they were like, yeah, this really powerful race, and then they're gone for a long time. Then all of a sudden they come back, and it just sounded super interesting. So that's another one I've been excited to get to for some time. So I put that on the list. So the next category, I have too many books here. There's 20 books in front of me, and so it's a little bit messy. But the next category is just single books, so either standalones or just books that I'm specifically looking to read one of. There's at least one of these that I know is part of a series, but I've had just the first book I've meant to read for forever. The first one I put in here is The Coward by Stephen Arion. This is kind of one of those retired person gets pulled back into duty to save the world and be the hero again. The twist on that trope being the fact that apparently everything was exaggerated or not exactly fully true, and he's actually super cowardly and just was basically lucky, or he was so cowardly that that's why he survived. But now he's being brought in and expected to be a hero again. This is one that sounded pretty interesting. I had heard people talking about it when it was new. I haven't heard a ton of people who've actually read it. I know a lot of people got it. But this would be an interesting one too. It's one I've been meaning to get to, and once again haven't. I've had it for a less amount of time, but one I would definitely like to read. Then next up we have Weeb World by Clive Barker. Now this I only very recently got. This one was from Half Price Books not too long ago, but immediately after getting it, I saw somebody post a video about it, and then I was talking to some other people about it, and it just sounds super interesting. It's supposed to be a pretty dark and weird fantasy. And just, it's from Clive Barker, who was primarily a horror author before this, too. So it just seems like it'd be a really interesting book. It's looked at as a classic, and it's supposed to be amazing. So another one that I want to get to, and I put it in here because even though I only have this a short amount of time, I would really like to read it sooner rather than later. So that's another that, even if it's not picked, I might read at some point. Not this month, though. Next up, we have Mordu by Alex Phoebe, and this is one that I actually got rejected for an e-arc for it, and then I ended up randomly finding it either on Book Outlet or from Half Price Books. I don't actually remember, but this is like a story. It takes place in a city that's like built on the literal corpse of a dead god, and there's all kinds of like magic involved and everything, and it just sounded really sinister and interesting, and so it was kind of a random pickup, and the art too, just, I don't know, this one sounded really interesting. It definitely caught my interest. So it's another one where, at this point at least, it's just a single book, but one that I do want to get to at some point. The next, going to a couple of books I've actually had for quite a long time. First one is The Golden Key, and this is by Melanie Ron, Jennifer Roberson, and Kate Elliott. I love me some Kate Elliott. I haven't read a lot of the other two, but this is supposed to be a really good book, and it's very specifically a standalone. I've heard people refer to it as just one of those like perfect standalones, and so it's one I've meant to get to for quite a long time. But this is a fantasy. I think it takes place like kind of like Renaissance time, though. Is when that one is. And then we have also making a repeat appearance from the last list, The Unremembered by Peter Aurelian. And this one is, I've seen the ratings are kind of mixed for it, but I was just curious to try this author because Brandon Sanderson had mentioned him several times and just kind of talked about how he was interesting as an author. So this is another one I don't remember. I'm sure I've read the description at some point, but it's just basically, it's something that I've had for quite a long time. And it's something that I've been meaning to get to. So I like to have some of those books on the list when I do the Booktube Spin, because if they get selected, well, there you go. Then I'm finally going to read it, and I don't have to get around to it because I'm now obligated to by the spin. Going into the next selection of 5, and these are more that are new series and books that I've been meaning to start. First one is Fireborn by Rosaria Munda, and this is supposed to be a really interesting one that involves dragons and is like heavily politically charged as well. This is a YA novel, but I've heard people just say that it's really, really good and doesn't read like, like bad YA or anything like that. I know my good friend Walker has talked really highly about this book, and a lot of other people I have seen as well. So this is one I got and have been meaning to get through. It seems like it'd be a pretty quick read too, and some of these are like that. So if I happen to get something that's also quick to read, that's like a double win. And then we have The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. Also the first in a series. This is another one too where I've heard some mixed things. Some people really seem to like this, but the base plot of this one I just remember was super interesting because it's literally about ships that are made from the bones of dragons, but then dragons start going extinct and they can't make their ships anymore, and they like discover a new area where there are still some dragons, so everybody's going and trying to get them. So it's really different from like the standard dragon type story. And I think I saw this shortly after reading Live Ships too, so I'm just like, ooh, a weird ship book. That sounds interesting since I just like live ships. So interested to get that as well. Next up is Fate of the Fallen by Kel Cade. This is one that I know it was insanely popular on BookTube for a while, and I just have never really gotten it. And I think this is like basically, if I recall, I should look in case I'm totally wrong, but like the hero or the savior like loses, and then they have to figure it out. Yeah, it basically sounds like they like the chosen one fails, I think, is the plot, and like other people have to step in. But that one I had gotten specifically just because I kept hearing about it and everybody seemed to like it, and it's a pretty short book, so like I really don't have an excuse for not having read it yet. I just never seem to get to it, so that I also put on the list. Then we have The Emperor's Blades by Brian Staveley. This I actually got at the same time as Fate of the Fallen forever ago originally, and this is like the emperor dies and then their 3 children are in different areas around the world and like coming together trying to like hold the empire together, I believe. And I ended up actually winning the whole trilogy in a contest on Yolene Reed's channel, and so I decided, I'm like, well, I definitely still really want to read this, especially now that I have the whole trilogy. I've heard tons of really good things about this, so this is another one that I really have been meaning to get to. Alright, and then last in this group is Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. I was going to try to get to this because Leslie from The Nerdy Narrative is doing a reread of these right now, and I know Andrew is reading them and loving them too. So I've seen a ton of people on our Discord who've been reading it and are really, really enjoying it. Of course, Alan spoke extremely highly of these as well, and it sounds like something that I'm really going to enjoy. And I wanted to read it last month. I really did, and I just didn't get to it, and so I probably won't get to it this month unless it's the pick. Then I'll try to throw it in here soon. But unless it is, I probably still won't get to it. So I decided, I'm just going to put this in the BookTube Spin list, just in case that helps me get to it quicker. And then the last group, which I always like to have in here specifically as well, is 5 books that I have had for a while and I just keep pushing off reading very specifically. So these are ones that I still want to read, but I've been pushing off for one reason or another, and so I want to read them a lot less than some others, but that's why this is a good opportunity if I happen to get one of those where I just haven't been getting to it. The first, and I'm convinced at this point, this may be the only way I'll ever get to this book because I have meant to for so freaking long, but is Quicksilver by Neal Stephenson. This is the first book in the Baroque trilogy. They're all pretty large books. I've heard this is kind of slow and really, really wordy, and but it sounded interesting. I liked the kind of minimalist covers of this whole trilogy. I have the whole trilogy in hardcover. I got used and jumped on, and I just never got into them. And it's starting to feel like I'm never going to get to them. So maybe this will be the time if this one gets picked. Next up is The Rage of Dragons. I've also had this for quite a while. I started buying books a lot more once I started like being active in the booktube community. This harkens back to before I even was, when I still had the channel, and I got it because I just kept hearing people rave about it. And then I finally get the book after hearing people rave about it for forever. Then all of a sudden I start hearing the other side, where a lot of people really didn't care for it for a lot of really valid reasons. So this is another one where I know Andrew has, I think, DNF'd this several times, and so that also put me off reading it because we have such similar taste. But Leslie and some others just swear by this book, so I will read it at some point. It's one that I will give a shot, but I just keep putting off, so we have that in here as well. Next up is The Bloody Rose, book 2 of the Banned series by Nicholas Eames. Now this one, originally I thought I would have read right away, because I bought both when I got Kings of the Wild. Kings of the Wild, unfortunately, was one of those books for me that was like, not only oversold to me, but sold to me in a completely different way from what it is. So I went in with the complete wrong expectations and did not enjoy it nearly as much as I probably would have otherwise. Why I like going into books blind, why you heard me say I don't really know a ton about a lot of the books that I have. I don't like to have a lot of expectations because that can take a book like Kings of the Wild, which is almost exclusively loved by pretty much everybody, but because of the way I was told about it and what I was thinking was going to happen just was not at all what I got, and so it just kind of didn't work as well for me. I still do want to read the sequel. I still liked Kings of the Wild. I didn't hate the book by any means. It just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. But I once again, I've just kept putting it off because most people don't even like this as much as Kings of the Wild, so that's kind of made me be like, oh boy, maybe I'll keep putting it off. And so I have. Then of course we have, I'm always saying I'm going to read it. I will eventually, but Red Country by Joe Abercrombie. I have had some Abercrombie fans say you can actually even just skip this one. I'm not going to. I am going to read it. I've mentioned several times before, Abercrombie, I have a very love-hate relationship. He's a very talented author, but I don't like a lot of his books nearly as much as most people, and have had a lot of problems with them and been pretty lukewarm on them. But I do plan to read in order. I have the first 2 books of Age of Madness, as well as the Sharp Ends anthology book with like the short stories. And I do plan to read that too, and the Age of Madness, but I'm going to read this first. It would be this Sharp Ends, then Age of Madness, and so it's going to be a while probably yet, but if it gets picked, then I'll finally read it. And finally, one that I'm sad to say has now fallen into the I've been holding off on is the Dinosaur Lords by Victor Milan. And this book I specifically bought because it's a knight on a dinosaur. The second book is Dinosaur Knights. I have that too. I found them really cheap. I'm like, this sounds like something I need to get. And I started hearing not great things overall about the book. And specifically, I know somebody who had been reading them was really excited, like me, because of, the whole knight dinosaur thing, and just said it was not very good. So this will be one too. I need to just kind of start, because some of these books too, especially if they're in a series, if I end up DNFing them and I have multiple books, then I can unhaul some books and get rid of them. But this has now been relegated to the list of books that I've been putting off, so I decided to put it on this list as well, because then maybe that'll actually get me to finally read the book. So those are my 20 books. I did do them in order. I have a spreadsheet where I have them listed as well, and I am excited to see which books I will have to read for the rest of this year here too. So that's definitely 2 books will be pretty easy to fit in no matter which ones they are, and I'm excited to see. So these are all books that, even the ones that I've been putting off, I do still want to get to. I never, I don't keep a book if I don't plan on reading it. So this has been a fun way to do it, and I'm excited to see what comes up. So I will be checking back once Rick posts the video for number 4. Let me know down in the comments if you're doing the Booktube Spin, if you've done it in the past as well. What are some interesting things that are on your list? Or also, if you want to and don't have a channel as well, you can check out the Discord and post your list there and let us know what you're doing for Booktube Spin. That's definitely a place that you can post publicly. You're specifically supposed to post publicly so that you are kind of like locked in and can't be like, oh, I got this book, and go from there. So it's a lot of fun to do, so I'm excited to see what comes out. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like. Once again, check the link in the description for a link to the Wizardly Do It Discord. If you want to post a list or just chat books or any of these, let me know your thoughts in the comments too on any of these books as well. Tell me if I should bump up or down anything if they don't get chosen. Always interested to hear that. And of course, if you want to see more of my content, make sure to subscribe.